Picture this. You are holding a library in your hands. Not one book, a whole shelf. That is the Bible. It is a collection of writings created across many centuries by many voices in many places under war, exile, peace, empire, poverty, and hope. Some parts read like gripping stories. Some read like laws. Some are songs, some are poetry, some are letters. Some are strange visions full of symbols. If you expect it to feel like one smooth novel, you will get lost. If you understand it as a library telling one long story about God and humanity, it becomes clearer, deeper, and far more interesting. This script is a simple guided tour. Think of it as a map. We will not cover every detail, but you will leave with the storyline, the big themes, and the reason this book has shaped so much of history, culture, and personal life for billions of people. Let us start with the big idea. The Bible is mainly asking two questions. What is wrong with the world? And what can be done about it? Everything else is built around those questions. The first pages of the Bible begin with a statement that sets the tone. Reality is not random. The world has intention. In Genesis, the creation story shows God bringing order out of chaos. Light appears, land appears, life multiplies, and then humans show up with a shocking claim attached to them. Humans are made in the image of God. The simple meaning is this: human life has value. Humans are not just clever animals. Humans are moral beings with responsibility, creativity, and the ability to love, build, and destroy. Then the story turns quickly. The first humans break trust. The Bible calls this sin. Not just small mistakes, but a deep fracture, a decision to grab control, to define evil on our own terms, and to live as if we are the center. The result is not just guilt, it is damage. Shame enters, blame enters, fear enters. Relationships break. And the world that looked harmonious starts to feel tense. Immediately you see the next step: violence. Cain kills Abel. One brother kills another. It is like the Bible is saying, once the heart bends away from trust and goodness, the cracks spread outward into society. After that, the stories show a world that is spiraling. People become more violent, more selfish, more arrogant. The famous flood story arrives. With Noah, people often remember it as an animal story, but the main idea is moral and spiritual. The world is described as filled with violence. God judges it, but also preserves life through Noah. After the flood comes a covenant, a promise symbolized by the rainbow. The message is that judgment does not erase mercy. Even when humans go wrong, God remains committed to the future. Then comes the Tower of Babel. Humans try to build a tower and make a name for themselves. It is not just about bricks. It is about pride and control. The result is confusion and division. Languages scatter. People separate. The Bible is explaining something many people feel. Humans want unity, but we keep breaking it. We want greatness, but we often chase it in ways that crush others. At this point, the Bible does something clever. It zooms in. Instead of focusing on humanity as a whole, it focuses on one person. Abraham. This is a major turning point. God calls Abraham and makes a promise. Abraham will become a great family, a great nation. And through that nation, blessing will reach all nations. This is important. The Bible is saying the healing of the world will come through a story, through people, through history, through messy real life, not through abstract theory. Abraham is not presented as perfect. He shows faith, but he also fears, lies, and makes terrible calls. That is one of the Bible's most consistent patterns. God works through flawed people. The hero is not the human character. The hero is God's faithfulness. After Abraham comes Isaac, then Jacob. Jacob is complicated. He tricks, he wrestles, he runs, he returns. He becomes Israel, a name that becomes the identity of the whole people later on. Then comes Joseph, one of the most cinematic stories in the Bible. Joseph is betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Then, through a chain of events, he rises to power in Egypt. Later, his brothers arrive desperate for food, and Joseph ends up saving the very people who harmed him. Joseph's story carries a theme that people remember because it feels real. Evil can be real, but it does not always get the final word. The Bible does not pretend suffering is good. It suggests that God can work through suffering, even when humans mean things for harm. Then the Bible reaches one of its greatest drama moments, Exodus. Israel becomes enslaved in Egypt. Their suffering is not treated as a side note. It is central. God hears. God responds. Moses is called to confront Pharaoh. There are plagues. There is a showdown. There is the escape through the sea. Then there is a long wilderness journey. Exodus is not only a rescue story, it is also an identity story. Who are these people now? They are freed, but they are not yet wise. They are rescued, but they are not yet mature. In the wilderness, they complain fear and sometimes turn back in their hearts. And yet the story keeps showing God guiding, feeding, and correcting them. This is where the Bible introduces laws and commandments in a big way. The 10 Commandments are not given as random rules. They are presented as a way of life for a community that has been freed from slavery. Many of them are basic but powerful. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not lie. Do not abuse sexuality. Do not worship power and money as if they are gods. Honor parents. Rest. These are foundations for a stable society. Even people who are not religious often respect the moral seriousness here. But the laws are also more than social rules. They are meant to shape hearts. They reveal a God who cares about justice, honesty, family, worship, and the treatment of the vulnerable. Widows, orphans, foreigners, and the poor are mentioned again and again. The Bible is not neutral about how society treats the weak. It insists that power must be accountable. After the wilderness, Israel enters the land, and over time they demand a king. This is another key moment. They want to be like other nations. They want visible strength. God warns them that kings can become oppressive. The people insist anyway. The Bible is very realistic about politics. Power can be useful. Power can also corrupt. The first king is Saul. He starts strong, then falls into insecurity and disobedience. Then comes David, the most famous king. David is remembered as brave, poetic, passionate, and deeply flawed. He defeats Goliath. He unites the kingdom. He writes songs. He also commits serious sin, including abuse of power and betrayal. The Bible does not hide it. It shows both the beauty and the disaster of a powerful leader. David's story teaches something uncomfortable but honest. A person can be gifted and still dangerous. A person can worship and still fail. The Bible does not ask you to pretend leaders are clean. It asks you to be sober about the human heart. After David comes Solomon. Solomon is known for wisdom and wealth. He builds the temple in Jerusalem, a major symbol of worship and identity. But Solomon also compromises. He accumulates power. He multiplies wealth. He drifts into idolatry. After him, the kingdom splits into two, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. This leads to centuries of political chaos, corruption, and spiritual confusion. Now, here is where many people get bored when reading the Bible, because there are many kings and many conflicts. But the interesting part is not the endless names. The interesting part is the message running beneath it. The Bible keeps asking, will you trust God or will you worship substitutes? Will you live with justice or will you use power to exploit? Will you repent when you mess up? Or will you harden your heart? This is where the prophets arrive. And they are some of the most intense voices in the Bible. Prophets are not mainly fortune tellers, they are truth tellers. They confront leaders, they expose injustice, they call out fake religion. They tell the people, you cannot sing worship songs and then crush the poor. You cannot offer sacrifices and then cheat in business. You cannot pray in public and then abuse your family. The prophets insist that faith must shape character and society. Prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Amos speak about judgment, but also hope. They warn that if a society becomes unjust and arrogant, it will collapse. Sometimes collapse is not only punishment, It is consequence. When leaders become corrupt and people ignore truth, nations fall apart, and that is what happens. Israel is conquered. Judah is conquered. Many are taken into exile. They lose land, temple, and political power. This is one of the darkest parts of the Bible's story. But it is also one of the most important, because it forces a deeper question. If everything collapses, is God still faithful? During and after exile, the Bible records grief, confession, and longing. Some of the most raw poetry is found here, especially in the Psalms. The Psalms are songs and prayers, and they cover every emotion: joy, anger, fear, celebration, like loneliness, hope, and despair. They show that the Bible is not asking you to be emotionally fake. It gives you language for real life. You also get wisdom literature like Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. These books are like philosophical reflections. Proverbs offers practical wisdom for daily life: how to speak, how to work, how to handle money, how to avoid foolishness, how to choose friends. Ecclesiastes is more cynical and honest. It asks, what is the point of life if everything fades? It notices that work, pleasure, and even success can feel empty if there is no deeper meaning. Job wrestles with suffering. Job is a good man who suffers terribly. He wants answers. His friends give simplistic explanations. God's response is not a neat formula, but a huge reminder that reality is bigger than human understanding. This matters because one of the most common questions people ask is, why do bad things happen? The Bible does not give one simple answer. It offers multiple angles. Some suffering is caused by human evil, some is caused by foolish choices, some seems random, some is beyond our ability to explain. And yet the Bible keeps pointing to the idea that God can be present even inside suffering, not just after it. Now we reach the bridge between Old Testament and New Testament. After the exile, people return. They rebuild, they try again. But the world is not fixed. Empires rise and fall. The people live under foreign rule. And a strong hope grows. The prophets spoke of a future rescue. A Messiah. A king who would be different. A servant who would bring justice, a light for the nations. People began to long for a new era where God would restore, heal, and rule with righteousness. This hope leads directly into the New Testament. The New Testament begins with Jesus, and whether you believe in him or not, you cannot deny his impact. Jesus is presented not just as a teacher, but as the center of the Bible's whole story. He arrives announcing something called the kingdom of God. That phrase is easy to misunderstand. It does not mean a political kingdom with borders. It means God's rule breaking into human life. It means God's way of reality showing up inside a broken world. Jesus teaches in stories, parables. He talks about seeds, fields, coins, family, debt, parties, and storms. He makes deep ideas simple. He focuses on the heart. He challenges hypocrisy. He lifts up the poor and the outsider. He confronts religious leaders who use religion as a power tool. He heals the sick. He eats with people society rejects. He tells people to forgive. He tells people to love enemies. He tells people to stop performing and start becoming honest. One of the most radical things Jesus does is redefine greatness. In most systems, greatness means power, status, winning, being served. Jesus flips it. Greatness means serving. Love means sacrifice. Leadership means humility. That message is still disruptive today. But Jesus is not only gentle, he is also sharp. He warns about greed. He warns about self-righteousness. He warns that you can gain the world and lose your soul. He exposes how easily people worship money, status, and control. The story then reaches the central event of Christianity. Jesus is arrested, tried, and executed by crucifixion. This is not presented as an accident. It is presented as a climax. The Bible's theme of sin, brokenness, and rescue converges here. Why would the Bible place so much weight on a crucifixion? Because it claims something bold. It claims that God confronts evil not only by condemning it, but by absorbing its cost and breaking its power. The cross is presented as a place where justice and mercy meet. The logic is not simple on first read, but the heart of it is this. Humans are deeply broken. Humans cannot fully fix themselves. God steps in, not as a distant judge only, but as a suffering rescuer. Then comes the resurrection. The New Testament claims Jesus rose from the dead. For believers, this is the proof that death is not final, that evil does not win, and that new creation has begun. For skeptics, this is the hardest claim. But notice something, even if you are skeptical. The story is not saying, escape the world. It is saying the world can be renewed. It is not saying suffering is meaningless. It is saying hope is possible even after the worst. After Jesus, the book of Acts shows the early Christian movement spreading. It begins in Jerusalem and moves outward. The followers of Jesus, many of them ordinary people, start forming communities. They share resources. They care for widows. They cross ethnic boundaries. They preach in public. They face persecution. They make mistakes. They argue. They reconcile. It is messy, human, and surprisingly realistic. Then come the letters, written by leaders like Paul, Peter, James, and John. These letters address practical issues: how to live, how to handle conflict, how to treat money, how to handle suffering, how to pray, how to serve. They are not abstract theology only. They are community advice for real people. Paul's letters especially focus on grace. Grace means undeserved favor. The claim is that people are not saved by moral performance, but by trusting in God's gift. That does not mean behavior does not matter. It means the order changes. You do not obey to earn love. You obey because you are loved. The Bible repeatedly pushes against the idea that you can fix yourself through pure willpower. It says transformation is deeper. It involves the heart, humility, repentance, and a new way of living. James emphasizes something that balances this. Faith without action is dead. In simple terms, if you say you believe, but your life never changes, you are probably fooling yourself. The Bible is pushing for integrity. Words and actions must match. Peter talks a lot about suffering and endurance. He writes to people under pressure. He reminds them that hardship does not mean God has abandoned them. He encourages them to respond to evil without becoming evil. John focuses heavily on love, not sentimental love, but active love. Love that shows up in patience, truth, and sacrifice. John also warns about deception and false teaching because humans are easily misled, especially when teaching flatters their ego. The New Testament ends with Revelation, a book full of symbols. People often get lost here. The simplest way to understand Revelation is this. It is written to encourage believers under oppression, showing that empire does not have the final word, that evil will be judged, and that God's kingdom will ultimately prevail. It uses dramatic imagery, beasts, battles, and cosmic scenes, not to confuse for fun, but to communicate hope and warning in a powerful way. Revelation ends with a vision of renewal, not people floating in the clouds forever, but a new heaven and new earth, a restored world, a city where tears are wiped away, a place without death and injustice. The Bible ends not with escape, but with restoration. Now that you have the storyline, here are the big themes that make the Bible interesting instead of overwhelming. First theme. Humans are both glorious and broken. The Bible does not flatter humans as basically good and just needing better education. It also does not say humans are worthless. It holds both truths at once. Humans have dignity. Humans also carry a deep tendency to selfishness, pride, and harm. That is why history repeats the same patterns. Second theme. God is both just and merciful. The Bible is not afraid to talk about judgment, but it also keeps highlighting mercy. Justice without mercy becomes brutal. Mercy without justice becomes meaningless. The Bible tries to hold both. Third theme, covenant. This is the idea of a binding relationship. God makes promises, people respond. When people fail, God remains faithful, but there are consequences. Covenants shape the Bible's structure, with Noah, with Abraham, with Israel, with David, and then the new covenant in the New Testament through Jesus. Fourth theme, idolatry. This is bigger than statues. Idolatry means taking a good thing and making it an ultimate thing. Money can become an idol. Status can become an idol. Nation can become an idol. Romance can become an idol. Even religion can become an idol if it becomes a performance for control. The Bible keeps exposing how humans worship substitutes. Fifth theme, the upside-down kingdom. The Bible, especially through Jesus, keeps flipping normal values. The first become last. The proud are humbled, the humble are lifted, the strong are challenged, the weak are protected, the greatest serves. This is not a motivational slogan. It is a direct challenge to how humans naturally build hierarchies. Sixth theme, hope. Not optimism, hope. Optimism is a mood. Hope is a claim about reality. The Bible's hope is that evil is real but not ultimate, suffering is real but not meaningless, death is real but not final, and renewal is possible. Now let us make the Bible even easier to read by understanding genre. Genre means the type of writing. When you read a poem, you do not read it the same way as a news report. The Bible contains many genres, and if you confuse them, you will misread it. Genesis includes stories with deep meaning. Exodus includes narrative and law. Psalms are songs and prayers. Proverbs are wise sayings. Prophets use poetic language and strong imagery. The Gospels are biographies with a purpose. Letters are written to specific communities with specific problems. Revelation is symbolic and visionary. This matters because people sometimes take poetic imagery too literally or take historical narrative as if it is a modern textbook. The Bible is ancient literature. It uses ancient ways of speaking. It is not trying to answer every modern question. It is trying to form a worldview and shape a people. So why does this matter today? Even if you are not religious, the Bible has influenced law, art, music, politics, moral language, and human rights discussions. It has inspired extraordinary acts of compassion. It has also been misused to justify harm when people twist it. That is another reason it is worth understanding properly. If you are approaching it as a learner, here is a simple way to keep it interesting. Read it as one long rescue story. You will see the pattern. Humans break things. God calls people back. Humans fail again. God keeps working. The story builds toward Jesus, then spreads outward into the world, ending with the promise of renewal. Now, let us land this script with a simple summary of what the Bible is really saying in everyday language. The world is good but damaged. Humans are valuable but broken. We keep choosing selfishness and pride, and it spills into violence, injustice, and division. God does not abandon the world. God starts a rescue plan through a people, then brings it to a climax through Jesus. Jesus teaches a new way of living, confronts hypocrisy, and offers forgiveness and transformation. The early church spreads this message, forming communities shaped by love, integrity, and hope. The story ends with the promise that evil will not win forever and that the world will be renewed. That is the Bible as a simple and interesting big story. It is not a small book of rules. It is a long narrative about human nature, failure, forgiveness, justice, mercy, and hope. It tells you uncomfortable truths about the human heart and then offers a radical vision of restoration. If you ever felt the Bible was confusing, the problem might not be the Bible. The problem might be that nobody gave you the map first. Now you have the map.